Culture shock happens all the time.
In New Zealand, if I was called at 11 o'clock, something catastrophic had happened.
Who eats duck neck in the office?
Today, bosses and staff are having a discussion about it.
Oh, maybe you shouldn't. And I was like, no, I think I should. She's like, don't.
I had to stay until my boss left.
A different culture may not be better or worse than your own. They are simply different.
Don't miss it.
Welcome to Culture Matters. Welcome to Culture Matters. We have a big group of audience here. It looks like we have quite a lot of Chinese people and some foreign guests. And let me start with a question, Allison. You've been here for about two and a half years working in ICS.
Exactly.
And ICS is still primarily Chinese colleagues, Chinese bosses.
Yeah, I think I was the only foreigner in my department for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what is it like for you to be working next to Chinese people day and night?
I think it is easy to feel a little isolated. You're like, what's going on? I can't really understand everything. What are they laughing at? But yeah.
Any major culture shock in the workplace?
A little one I noticed, nobody uses email. For me, like, at my old job, there's a paper trail for everything. And here's like calling or like just in casual conversation.
Or
but
SMS.
Yeah,
and now
sure.
it's like WeChat
Right,
or
right,
WhatsApp.
exactly.
Well, today we'll find out because today our topic is about Chinese boss. So what is it like to work for a Chinese boss if you're not a Chinese, right? Or maybe you're Chinese but worked abroad for a long time and coming back and suddenly you're getting culture shock, right? So our first guest is Jie Liang. Let's welcome her. Welcome.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
Liang Jie is now a partner at an international accounting firm. She manages several staff from abroad as well as local staff on her team and has worked with a wide range of clients from different countries.
Right now you do have a few non-Chinese staff underneath you. So how many people do you have?
About 4 or 5 directly in my team.
Out of how many? Sorry?
In my team, there are only about 40 people.
But that's interesting. So within the 40 people, we have about 4 to 5 who are non-Chinese. You're mixing them together. Any interesting dynamics you observed so far?
Absolutely. On a daily basis.
In a good way or a bad way or both?
Good and bad. I tend to find that working with my Chinese staff, if I give the direction and say, please do this research and look into several areas, they will say, yes, turn around and do it. And if it takes them till 2 a.m., they will do it. But if I'm working with my foreign staff, sometimes, they'll just come, as soon as I assign a task, they'll be like, that's not possible, you're looking at the wrong area, I can't do this.
But actually in terms of management, aspect, isn't it easier to manage Chinese staff than to just listen to you, right? You can be the real boss,
Right. It makes you feel more authoritative and makes you feel, oh, I'm the all-powerful boss. But at the same time, I'm in the business doing consulting.
Right.
I think a lot of times you're asking people to think out of the box.
Right.
You want them to be creative. Maybe they're not as experienced as I am, but they may have seen things that I have not.
Right.
I'm missing an important point. So if they are so willing for me to lead them down the wrong path and then come back and that I recognize my mistake. And
you'll be really a big trouble, right? You have to bear all the
then I would look really bad.
Right?
Yeah.
We're going to discuss just several points we can focus on. So for example, let's say point 1 is, let's say when you run into disagreements with your staff, which happens all the time. You know, I think the Western sense is you can agree to disagree, right? But I don't think that really exists in the Chinese
Harmony,
tradition.
you have to have harmony here all the time.
Any differences you observe in the way people have discussions or disagreement with you?
I'll use one example. I think, if it's internal meeting and internal prep work and everything, however they do it, I'm quite okay with that. But if we're at a client meeting, it happened one time. I have a manager from Germany. We were talking about some international tax issues.
But facing
clients. The client just happened to start asking very detailed questions.
Right.
I used my sense to guess the answer, meaning I would say, okay, in my view, it could be something like this, but we can check for you later. My German staff quickly said, oh, that's not correct.
Wait, level-wise?
She's my team member, and we're facing the client together. So she just went and said, no, it's not correct. It should be blah, 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 blah.
In a way.
I worked for a German company, and they are very direct. You cannot give a wrong answer. You know, if you give
doesn't matter who gives the wrong answer.
Wrong, but you know, like if they have the correct answer, they will give it to you. And I think this is a difference that people talk about. Like if it benefits the company, then in the West, you know, people will kind of focus on that. But here, if it benefits your boss or you know, like the face aspect, then people will go in that direction.
To me, it's more than just my personal face. And I'm thinking we need client to have that confidence level in what we're doing.
So what did you do on the spot?
I just went on and say, we need to go do a bit more research. So I didn't say she's right, I'm wrong, whatever.
But did you have a private talk with her afterwards?
Yeah.
Like next time in front of the client, you know.
But actually read my cue. I did say it was not definitive. I said, let's go back and research it. So if you really truly feel strongly about that at the point, you can say to the client, there may be some other development Jay's not aware of. It's just so that we, as a team, we don't have disagreement right there.
Right, you're a united front that you're presenting to the client.
Yeah, but you know, with my Chinese managers, if we go out to meetings, it's a total different scene. Basically, they will let you talk. If you are making a total fool of yourself, they would not even look up.
Now, what about, let's say, motivation? How do you keep your employees motivated? How do you encourage them? And do you have to use different ways to encourage the Chinese versus the non-Chinese staff?
First is in the goal setting. When we are setting goals, we tell everybody you need to do SMART goals. You know, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. The achievable and realistic points, I find very different for my Chinese staff as well as for my foreign staff. When I give this to my Chinese staff and say, here are your goals for the year, be like, okay, yes, I will do my best. End of story, right? But if I'm really working with my expat employees, a lot of times they would be looking at these goals and give me the feedback and says, that's not possible. Yeah, I cannot. It's impossible because of A, B, C, D. I'm not going to do it. I want it adjusted.
So who's right? I mean, are the foreigners whining or are the Chinese people saying they can do something they can't?
That comes to actually another point about facing difficulties. My Chinese staff, even if they feel the goals are not achievable or realistic, they feel bad to tell me that. Or they think this may reflect badly on them, on their ability. So there was not a discussion up front for that part.
Sense it, right?
Yeah.
So do you try to draw them out in some ways?
Even with my background, how I grow up, my parents always set goals I can't reach. To think that this way it will push you harder to reach that. But then I realized that working with my non-Chinese staff, this isn't motivating. This is actually demotivating. Okay, you tell me something I must do, but I know, however I try, I'm not going to get there. Why would I try?
It feels like you're setting them up for failure, and then they can't trust you. I think it comes down to a trust issue.
I mean, I think that also brings in two other things that people like to say is like the way we look at work-life balance and also the public versus the private arena. I think maybe the traditional Chinese or Asian style is that the boss is whatever, like you just mentioned. Boss is A, I go for A, and even if it's on the weekend, you know, in my private time, I'll go for it, right? But I think the Western sense or the foreign sense is usually, this is my work time, this is my life time, this is my private time, this is my public time. So how do you manage that?
I think everybody has the expectation that overall working in China means longer hours and more demand on your time.
Okay.
But I do find, you know, in China we do run training sessions or some of the after-hour activities, but really just to get people to know each other, connect better. But those are during your personal time. Okay, maybe on a weekend, maybe on a Friday night. Actually, I do find my Chinese staff quite used to it. They don't mind. And they actually think, working in a firm, you know, it's like you have a lot of people at every level and they grow up together. So they think spending time together on a Friday night is perfectly fine. But when we are arranging this type of activities and inviting our foreign staff, a lot of times the feedback I get is, gosh, why is it on a Saturday? Like, I don't mind having, dinner with you guys, but why should it be on a Friday night?
I mean, Alice, maybe we can ask you, like, would you be happy if the entire Saturday is taken away by ICS?
I have done that before.
And how did you feel that?
I also think foreigners are a little more concerned about compensation too. Where it's like, if you want me to work if you want me to give my time on a weekend, then I need to be compensated somehow, or it needs to be made up some other way. And I think the other thing is, when you leave the office, at least in my experience, your coworkers don't call you at 10 p.m. They don't email you at 4 a.m. asking for something at 10 a.m. the next morning. I think there's more of a divide in that way,
boundary,
at least in my experience. Whereas here, it's kind of like you can, pick up the phone and call people whenever. I called someone at 10 p.m. last night, and the phone was off. I was like, yeah.
Why do you ever turn off your cell phone? That's just unthinkable. That's definitely true. I think even drawing from my own experience, when I was leading a team back in U.S. and Canada, if we have urgent projects, I think beforehand I would ask my staff, would you be available those days? Can I call you at home on your cell phone? But I get spoiled here. I don't ever need to tell my Chinese staff that. I just call any hour I feel like.
Right. So this is where you're becoming more and more Chinese again, right?
You get used to living here. Actually, if you think about it, McDonald's can deliver any time for only this much money. We, the service provider providing to the client, they expect the same thing.
There's the competitiveness as well.
Right. I feel less guilt calling my Chinese staff. But my foreign staff, some do turn off the phones on the weekends.
That's interesting because I think in a different culture, certain kind of behaviors would be seen as too personal or not professional enough. How do you think professionalism, like from your observation, is defined by the non-Chinese staff versus the Chinese staff? Do you see a big difference?
When we were talking about professionalism and how you put that in real action, that's still very different. Because I think a lot of my expat employees do view as, I'm a professional, so you should trust my judgment. And so my judgment is, I will deliver this project to you by this time, but you should leave it up to me.
Don't call me every other day.
Right. When and how I do it. I will give it to you. Don't worry about it. But my Chinese staff don't get bothered by if I constantly calling, checking on the
Maybe they even prefer a little bit of guidance.
And they felt, because some of people that I see in my team, they prefer to say, if we have a project due tomorrow, let's just book a meeting room, have lunch, have dinner, have late night snack, and we'll work together, and we're in this room, get this done. But even if, say, I'm done, I'm entirely done with my piece, I will wait there and see if I can help with others, and even just to offer the support. But, my expat staff, they said, okay, if absolutely needed, I can do it. But if it's not, and if I have delivered my piece and did everything I can, why do I need to be?
And do you think on the client end it's kind of like that? I mean, just like, for example, New Year's Eve, I was planning on having dinner with some friends, and then some friends called at 7 p.m. and said, I'm sorry, I can't because my client just called me and asked me to get this done. I'm like, it's New Year's Eve, and they're like, they're a Chinese client, They don't celebrate a New Year's Eve for them. The New Year's Eve is like a month later, right? So do you also observe different kinds of expectations from the Chinese versus non-Chinese client?
My Chinese client usually think about their own needs first. You know how you can set your out-of-office reply and say, I'm sorry, for the next 3 days, I'm not around. My Western clients, if they did send me an email during that period of time, they get the automatic reply. They will say, don't worry about it, they won't chase me. But my Chinese clients, doesn't matter. The out-of-office reply does not really